The rope was still warm when I took the picture. It was a neat roll of plastic cord sitting on the dirty floor of Nathan's garage. It had done its job. It had held the weight of my best friend as he died. Now it was just a piece of proof. I took a close-up photo. I focused on the rough strings where the rope had pulled the hardest. Click. My name is Eli. I take pictures of dead people. I am a forensic photographer. My job is to make a perfect record of the end of a life. But this time, the dead person was Nathan, and the picture was a lie. I knelt next to him. My knee touched the cold concrete. He was slumped in the chair, his head leaning back. The rope mark on his neck was a deep, angry red, almost purple. It looked like a terrible necklace. His eyes were wide open, looking at the ceiling. But they did not see the light. They saw the moment the air stopped coming. I reached out and gently moved his hand. The small, clean gun I had put there felt cold and heavy. I needed the scene to look like a man killed himself, but I needed the small details to show he felt great sadness. The note, the fake one, was on the table. It was a perfect piece of writing about feeling sorry for himself and being guilty. I looked at his face. The tiny, broken blood spots, called petechial hemorrhages, were spread across his eyelids and cheeks. They looked like a group of dark, final stars. This was a gross detail, but it had to be there. It proved he died slowly and painfully. It proved the lie was true. I took the big picture, showing the whole scene. The chair, the body, the rope, the note. Everything was in the right place. Everything told the story I had made up. I felt nothing. No sadness, no win, no fear. Only the cold, clean feeling of doing a job perfectly. I was not a killer. I was an artist who made things happen. I had simply framed the end of a life that had become too messy and too loud. I packed my camera away. I wiped the glass lens. I walked out of the garage, leaving the quiet behind me. I drove home to Clara. She was still sleeping. She was tired from her night out. She was the reason for this whole picture. She was the beautiful, broken person who cheated on me with the man I had just photographed. I stood over her bed. I watched her chest go up and down. She was still breathing. She was still alive. She was still a puzzle, but not for long. Dead people are easy to guess. Living people change all the time, and I was about to get rid of the last person who could change my life. I was about to make her as quiet as Nathan. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. The kiss was cold. It was a promise of the stillness that was coming. The calm time was over. The real work had just started. My life before this was simple. I had Clara, my fiancée. She was bright and warm like the sun on a good day. She was a teacher who worked with young kids. She was the reason I came home. I also had Nathan. He was my best friend since we were little boys. He was a police detective, a man who chased the bad guys. He was the opposite of me, loud, funny, and always moving. We were a neat little group of three. I always liked the dead better. They don't lie. They don't pretend. Their stories are written in blood and broken bones, and I am the one who reads them. The living, though, they are a puzzle with too many pieces that don't fit. I had a thought I often told myself to stay calm. Sometimes, the dead are easier to understand than the living. The dead have made their final choice. The living are still making theirs, and that is where the danger starts. That is where the betrayal begins. And I was about to learn that the betrayal of the living is much more interesting than any death I had ever seen. The first crack in my perfect life happened on a Tuesday. Clara told me she had a late meeting with a student's parents. She always sounded so serious about her job. I believed her because I was not looking for a lie. Trust is just what you have when you don't have proof. That night I was supposed to give Nathan a memory card. It had the clear pictures from a crime scene. Nathan needed them for his police report. I drove to his apartment building. It was a tall, cold building made of glass and steel. I parked across the street. I did not call him. I just walked toward the front door. As I looked up, I saw the light on in his third-floor window, and then I saw them. The window was big and clear. They were standing close, too close for just friends. Clara was laughing. It was a sound I knew well, but it was for him. Nathan's hand was on her waist. It was a touch that said they belonged to each other. Then they kissed. It was not a fast, angry kiss. It was worse. It was slow and gentle. It was the kiss of two people who had done this many times before. It was a quiet secret that had been growing right under my nose. I stood there in the cool night air. I did not yell. I did not feel hot anger. I felt a deep, cold calm. It was the same feeling I get when I find the one small piece of evidence that changes a whole case. I was not a victim. I was a watcher who had just seen a very important thing happen. I turned and walked back to my car. The memory card was still in my hand. I drove home slowly. I was like a man who had just been given a new, hard problem to solve. I found Clara in the kitchen. She was making tea. She looked up, her eyes wide and innocent. "The meeting ran late," she said. Her voice was a little too high. "Mrs. Henderson's son is having trouble with his numbers." I looked at her face. I saw the lie, a small, ugly thing hiding behind her pretty eyes. "That's too bad," I said, my voice completely flat. "Numbers are very important." I did not fight her. I did not scream. I just went to my darkroom. It is a small, dark room in the basement where I work on my photos. I sat on the stool and looked at the red light. The betrayal did not break me. It made me focus. I realized that my life was now my most important case. Nathan and Clara were no longer people I loved. They were subjects, and I was going to record their crime, not with a camera, but with my life. My new plan started right away. It was not about getting back at them at first. It was about knowing. I needed to know how their lie worked. I needed to find the exact moment the lie began. I started small. I bought a tiny voice recorder. I hid it in a pen. I put it in the living room, then the kitchen. I listened to their phone calls, their quiet talks. I learned the secret language of their cheating. "The report is due late tonight" meant they were meeting at Nathan's place. "I need to check on the supplies" meant Clara was going to the cheap motel they used. I started writing in a notebook. I wrote down every move they made, every lie, every feeling. I called it the case file. Entry 4, Tuesday, 11:45 p.m. Clara comes home, says she is tired. I smell a little of Nathan's cheap cologne. Subject A is a bad liar. Subject B is careless. Entry 12, Saturday, 3:00 p.m. Nathan calls, asks about the old case file. Clara says she put it away. This means the motel. The lie is now normal for them. They are comfortable in their sin. The more I wrote, the colder I became. The cheating was no longer a hurt feeling. It was a cool thing to study. I saw how beautiful it was, the way two people could make such a tight, secret web of lies. My small tricks to mess with them started as a test. I wanted to see how strong their bond was. One night at dinner, I looked at Clara and said, "Nathan seemed worried today. He was asking me about the police looking into Detective Miller. He said he was worried about the pressure on the police station." Clara's fork stopped. Her eyes moved quickly. "Miller? Why would he worry about Miller?" "Oh, just normal worry," I said, shrugging. "You know Nathan. He worries about everything. He said it's easy for a good cop to get into trouble with bad people." I watched her. The seed was planted. She knew Nathan was doing bad things. My comment made her wonder if Nathan was telling me things or if I was too close to the truth. The next day I called Nathan. "Hey man, Clara was asking about you. She seemed really worried about the Miller thing. Did you tell her something?" Nathan's voice was careful right away. "The Miller thing? No, why would I? I barely know Miller." "I don't know," I said, sounding worried. She just seemed very concerned. "Maybe she heard something at the police station when she dropped off your lunch last week. You know how people talk." I hung up and smiled. The quiet between them would now be filled with doubt. Clara would wonder why Nathan was lying to me about talking to her. Nathan would wonder why Clara was asking me about a case he hadn't told her about. I was not trying to get back at them. I was just putting a new thing into their perfect plan. I was pushing them to worry about each other. They would never think the quiet man with the camera was the problem. They were too busy watching each other. I started to see the end of this story. It would not be a loud, angry fight. It would be a clean, perfect ending. I would not destroy them with fire. I would destroy them with ice. The worry was growing, a slow, quiet pressure in our lives. I was ready for the next step. I was ready for the first death. It would be the first shot in my great work. The first death had to happen. It was not about getting back at Nathan and Clara yet. It was about practice. I needed to see if I could stop just watching and start making things happen. I needed a test run for the main show. The person I chose was Marcus Vane. I knew him from Nathan's police files. He was a small-time criminal who often told the police secrets. He was a man who lived on the bad side of the law. More important, he knew too much about Nathan's secret deals, the money he took, the evidence he changed, the quiet bad things my best friend was doing. Marcus was a problem for Nathan, so he was the perfect person for me to use. Getting rid of him would do two things. It would help Nathan by getting rid of a witness, and it would give me a safe place to try out my first act of creation. I spent 2 weeks watching Marcus. I knew his daily life better than his own family. I knew he met Nathan every Thursday at 11:00 p.m. in the dark alley behind the old, empty warehouses near the water. It was a place of shadows and forgotten things. It was the perfect stage. My plan was very careful, like a true police investigation. I did not want a messy killing. I wanted a believable, sad accident. I wanted the scene to tell a story that was almost true, but just wrong enough that the police would not look too closely. I got my tools ready, a heavy metal pipe about 3 feet long. I wore thin, doctor's gloves when I touched it. I also got a long piece of very thin, strong fishing line. It was hard to see in the dark, but it was strong enough to hold a lot of weight. The night I chose was a Thursday. The air smelled strongly of salt and oil. I got there an hour early. I parked my car 3 blocks away. I wore dark clothes and soft shoes. I moved like a ghost and my heart was calm. This was not fear. This was focus. I found a good spot, a doorway across the alley from where they usually met. I waited. At 11:03 p.m. Marcus showed up. He was nervous, always looking around. He stood under the one street lamp that kept blinking on and off. He was easy to see. I let him wait for 10 minutes. The worry in the air was so thick you could almost touch it. Then I moved. I did not walk straight to him. I came from behind, quiet like the fog. I used the pipe not to kill him, but to hit him just hard enough to make him fall. I hit him low on the back of the head. It made a sharp, wet sound that the city noise quickly covered up. He fell right away, like a bag of rocks hitting the ground. The small bag of white powder he was holding slid across the floor. I kneeled next to him. He was still breathing, a weak, shaky sound. His eyes were trying to open. This was the bad part, the part that needed the most control. I did not want a simple beating. I wanted a fake accident that looked like a robbery gone wrong, but with a final, sure touch. I took the fishing line. I quickly wrapped it around his neck. I had practiced the knot many times on a fake head in my darkroom. It was a simple knot that would get tighter easily. I pulled. The line was so thin it felt like cutting through soft butter. Marcus made no sound, only a sudden, strong jerk of his body. His hands flew up, trying to grab the invisible line. His fingers tore at his own skin. His face, which was already pale, turned a terrible blue-red color. His eyes, wide with sudden, pure fear, looked right at mine for a second. It was a look of complete, honest truth. It was the most honest look I had ever gotten from a living person. I held the line tight for about 45 seconds. His body stopped jerking. The shaky breathing stopped. His eyes stayed open, looking at the street lamp above. I let go of the line. It sprang back, leaving only a thin, red line deep in the skin of his neck. Now the staging. I used the heavy pipe to hit the concrete curb near his head. It left a deep, fresh mark. Then I gently moved Marcus's head so his temple was resting against the curb. I used a small, smooth rock I had brought with me to tap his temple. It was just hard enough to break the skin and make a small cut. Blood started to come out, mixing with the wet concrete. I took the bag of drugs and sprinkled a little bit near his body. This made it look like he was trying to hide it, or that the robber was messy. I took the rest of the drugs and the pipe with me. I wiped the area where I had kneeled. I checked my shoes for any blood. I was clean. I drove home. I changed my clothes. Then I called Nathan. "Hey man, I just got a call from the police radio. They found a body near the warehouses. Looks like a robbery. They need a photographer. I'm going back out." Nathan groaned. "Are you serious? I was just about to go to sleep. Fine, I'll meet you there." When I got back to the alley, it was full of flashing blue and red lights. Nathan was already there. He looked tired and annoyed. I walked past the yellow tape. My camera bag was on my shoulder. I was Eli, the professional, the calm watcher. I kneeled next to Marcus. He looked exactly as I had left him. The small cut on his temple was now the most important thing at the scene. The doctor was already there, saying something about a hard hit to the head from falling onto a sharp surface. I started my work. Click, click, click. I took the wide pictures, the middle pictures, and then the close-ups. I focused on the cut, the way the blood had dried. I took a picture of his wide-open eyes, catching the final, frozen fear. I even took a picture of the faint red line on his neck, knowing that no one else would see it. Nathan stood over me. "Looks like a drug user got messy and hit his head," he said, kicking at the spilled powder. "Too bad. He was a good source of information." I looked up at him. My face showed no feeling. "It's a clean scene, Nathan. The story is simple. Robbery gone wrong. He fell, hit his head, an accident." I had written the script and the scene was playing out perfectly. The death was called an accident. The case was closed in 2 days. I learned 2 things from this test. First, that killing was not about feelings for me, but about skill. Second, that it was very easy to erase a person, to change their story from a life to a number, just by controlling the final picture. The quiet of the dead was now helping me. The quiet was getting louder. The death of Marcus was like a key that opened a dark door in my investigation. It proved I could do the job. But more important, it showed me how truly bad Nathan's corruption was. I had been using the excuse of helping Nathan with his papers to look at his computer at the police station. After Marcus died, Nathan was nervous, messy, and not paying attention. He gave me his password right away. It was a small, sad act of trust that made me feel even more sure of myself. What I found was not just a few small mistakes. It was a big, long-running plan. Nathan was not just taking money. He was protecting a drug dealer called the broker. He was changing proof, making sure police investigations went away from his clients, and using his power to silence anyone who got too close. The amount of money was huge. I found it all written down in secret files that I was able to open with a simple password, Clara's birthday. Finding this out did not shock me. It made me happy. It gave my revenge a good reason. I was not just a cheated boyfriend. I was someone who was bringing justice. I started thinking of Nathan and Clara only as Subject B and Subject A. Their names were too personal. They were now just numbers in a hard math problem I was going to solve. Subject B, Nathan, was like a sickness in the police system. He had ruined his badge, his friendship, and his soul for money. He was a simple, greedy man who thought he was smart. Subject A, Clara, was harder to figure out. I watched her closely. She knew. I saw the proof in her eyes, in the way she jumped when Nathan's phone rang late at night, in the way she spent money quickly as if trying to buy her way out of her own guilt. She was not a willing part of the bad things, but she was silent. She was stuck because of fear and the guilt of cheating. She stayed because of the money and because of the guilt. She was in a cage she had built herself, and I was about to lock the door. My thoughts became colder and clearer. It was no longer the voice of Eli, the man who loved. It was the voice of the director, the one who knew the whole story. I started planning the final act very carefully. It had to be perfect. It had to look like he killed himself. A man like Nathan, a police detective, would know how to end his life cleanly. It would be the final, right ending to his bad life. I started by making Nathan feel alone. I used what I knew about his bad deeds to make him doubt himself. I would mention a certain police file I saw on his computer, a file he thought was hidden. "Hey, Nathan," I would say calmly at the bar. "Did you ever check that tip about the warehouse on 14th Street? The one with the strange boxes? I saw the file on your computer." Nathan would turn pale. He would say slowly, "No, that was nothing." "Why?" "Just wondering," I would say, drinking my beer. "It looked like a very detailed report. You should probably delete it if it's nothing. You don't want the boss thinking you're wasting time." I knew he would not delete it. He was too proud. But the fear would start to grow. He would start to think his own partners, his own office, his own computer were against him. He would feel like he was being closed in, and he would never know that the quiet man who took pictures was the one doing it. The things I needed to get ready were even more detailed. I needed a way to make it look like he hanged himself that was clean, quiet, and left no sign of me. I chose his garage. It was separate from the house, quiet, and had a strong wooden beam across the ceiling. For 2 months, I slowly changed the whiskey in Nathan's expensive bottle. I used a thin needle to take out a little bit each week. I put in a mix of cheap alcohol and a drug that makes you sleepy. The drug was very strong and had no taste or smell. Nathan drank a lot, so he did not notice the change in taste. He was becoming slow, talking funny, and sleeping for a long time. He was making himself weak for the final hit. I needed a tool for the hanging that was strong and easy to hide. I chose a heavy car jack, the kind used for lifting big trucks. It was quiet, strong, and a normal thing to find in a garage. I bought a new one, used it once, and cleaned it very well. I put it in its box in my own garage. I also practiced the knot for the hanging, a simple loop that would get tighter when pulled. I used a thin, strong rope that would leave a deep mark. The most important part was the suicide note. I spent many hours on it. I had saved examples of Nathan's handwriting over the years, birthday cards, old notes, even some police papers. I studied how hard he pressed the pen and how he wrote his big letters. I used a special pen and practiced for weeks until I could write just like him. The note had to be real. It had to talk about his guilt over the bad things he did, and also his sadness about his life. I wrote it in his voice, a voice full of false courage and feeling sorry for himself. To anyone who reads this, I cannot do this anymore. The weight of it all, the money, the lies, the things I have done for the broker, it is too much. I have ruined everything I touched. My police badge, my life, my friendship with Eli. And Clara, I am so sorry for what I did to her. I deserve this. I cannot face the music. Let this be the end. Nathan. It was a perfect mix of truth and lies. It was the final bad piece of proof that would close the case on his life and open the door to ruining Clara. I was ready. The stage was set. The subjects were alone, worried, and sleepy from the drug. The director was ready to say go. The quiet was no longer a comfort. It was a clock counting down. The night I chose for Nathan's final scene was a Friday. Clara was out with her sister, trying on wedding dresses. I had told her to go. Nathan was home alone, drinking the last of the special whiskey. I drove to his house. I parked 2 streets away. I walked the rest of the way, moving quietly like a man who knows the stillness of death. I wore white clothes that I could throw away later like I do at crime scenes. No sign of me would be left. I went into the garage through the side door. I had messed with the lock before so I could open it easily. The air in the garage was cold and smelled of oil and old beer. Nathan was sitting in a chair near his work table, his head down on his chest. The drug had worked. He was sleeping deeply, breathing slowly and heavily. I worked fast and carefully. First, the staging. I brought in the new car jack and put it near the strong wooden beam. I tied the nylon rope to the beam. I pulled on the rope with all my weight to make sure it was strong. It was. Then I slipped the rope loop over Nathan's head. His skin was cold. He moved a little and made a low sound, but the drug kept him asleep. I fixed the rope so the knot was at the back of his neck. The way I did it was the most important part. A quick drop would have broken his neck. A slow, steady pull would cause a slow, painful death. It would leave dark spots in his eyes and face, but no big broken bones. It would look like a man who just gave up. I tied the other end of the rope to the car jack. I started turning the handle. The jack went up slowly and quietly. The rope became tight. Nathan's body lifted a few inches from the chair. His weight was now pulling against the rope. He woke up. It was not a fast, scared wake-up. It was a slow, confused one. His eyes opened wide and red. He did not know what was happening. He tried to talk, but the rope was already too tight. Only a choking sound came out. His hands, big and strong, flew up to the rope. He clawed at the nylon. He tried to pull it away, but the knot was too tight. He kicked his legs, hitting the work table with a dull thump. I stood back and watched. I was the director, and this was the most important part of the movie. His face started to change color. The small blood vessels in his eyes broke. His skin turned a deep, scary purple, almost black. The tiny red spots, the petechiae, popped up on his eyelids and forehead like dark, final freckles. He looked at me. He did not know who I was. He just looked like a scared animal trying to breathe. His tongue swelled up. He was drowning inside his own body. I did not move. I just watched the life leave the man who had been my best friend. It took 6 minutes. 6 minutes of quiet, terrible fighting. When his body finally went limp, his hands falling away from the rope, I waited 1 more minute. The silence that came next was total. It was the quietest sound in the world. I slowly let the jack down. His body fell back into the chair. I took off the rope. It left a deep, angry red line around his neck. Then I started the staging. I put the fake suicide note on the work table next to his empty glass. I took the small, clean gun I had and put it in his right hand. I wiped his fingerprints onto the handle. I made sure the gun was ready to fire. I put it so it looked like he had planned to shoot himself, but then changed his mind and used the rope instead. This made him look weak and unsure in his last moments. I took my final pictures of Nathan. I focused on the red spots, the swollen tongue, the deep rope mark. I recorded the sadness I had created. I drove home. I cleaned my tools. I waited for the phone call. The call came at 7:00 a.m. It was the police boss. Nathan was dead. I went to the scene. I acted like the heartbroken friend. I was allowed into the garage. I saw the boss holding the note, his face sad. "He killed himself, Eli," he said. "He couldn't live with the guilt." I looked at the scene. I looked for mistakes. There were none. The fake note was perfect. The staging was perfect. The twist, the suicide note which talked about his guilt over his bad deeds, was the perfect cover. It made his death a closed case. Clara arrived crying hard. She saw the note. Her crying turned into a deep, heavy guilt. She thought her cheating had made him do it. I held her. My arm was around her shaking body. "It's not your fault, Clara," I whispered, sounding very sad. "He was sick. He was lost." That night I went to her. I comforted her. I let her cry on my shoulder. I acted like the forgiving, sad fiancé. "I know about you and Nathan," I said softly. "I knew for a long time, but I forgive you. He's gone. We can start over." The relief on her face was huge. Then she started talking fast. She had to get the guilt out. "Oh, Eli, I am so sorry. It was a mistake. He was pushing me and I was scared, and he was so nice, and the money." He was taking so much money, and I knew about it. I knew about the bribes, and I was going to tell you, but I couldn't. I felt so guilty about the cheating. I thought if I told you about the money, you would leave me. She told me everything. The cheating, knowing about the money, the fear, the guilt. She poured out every ugly, desperate detail. My phone was in my pocket. It was recording. The tiny red light was blinking. It was getting the final bad piece of proof I needed. I let her finish. I held her until she fell asleep, tired from telling the truth. I kissed her forehead. It was a cold, final kiss. She had confessed to a crime she did not do, helping Nathan hide his bad deeds. She had confessed to the cheating. She had given me the final picture. The quiet was now total. I waited 1 week. 1 week of acting like the sad fiancé, 1 week of quiet, kind dinners, 1 week of watching Clara start to feel safe again. She thought she was forgiven. This was the last, meanest trick I played, giving her hope before taking it all away. During that week, I put together the final package of proof. It was a perfect story that made Clara look guilty. The package had 3 main things. 1. The audio recording. The full recording of Clara talking about knowing about Nathan's money and covering for him. The police would only hear a woman admitting to helping a criminal. 2. The money list. A printed copy of the secret money file I found on Nathan's computer. I had changed the file a little bit to make it look like Clara had moved some of the bad money using her own bank account. 3. The secret email. A printed copy of a fake email between Clara and Nathan, written months before. It talked about cleaning up the books and making sure the money is safe. I used a fake email address and a special computer program to send the original, so no one could trace it back to me. I mailed the package to the chief of police from a post office in a different town. The note inside was simple. The truth about Detective Nathan Miller's death and bad deeds is not what it seems. His fiancée, Clara, was helping him. Listen to the tape. The result was fast and loud. I was at the police station when the news hit. The chief was very angry. The office was a mess. They had closed Nathan's case, and now they had to open it again, with the shocking news that the sad widow was actually the bad guy. Clara was arrested at her school. I watched it on the news. They led her out in handcuffs. Her face was pale and confused. Her bright life was broken in one terrible moment. The news headlines were just what I thought they would be. Detective, fiancé arrested for helping with crime. Her public life was over. I went to see her in the jail cell. I acted like the loyal, confused fiancé. I brought her coffee and a small, soft blanket. She was a mess. Her hair was messy, her eyes were red from crying. She was no longer the beautiful, bright woman I had loved. She was a broken subject, a final, ruined photograph. "Eli," she whispered, her voice rough. "I don't get it. They have a tape. They have my voice, but the money. I never touched the money. I never sent those emails." I sat across from her, my face full of fake sadness. "I know, Clara. I told them you were confused. I told them you were sad, but they have the proof. They have your voice." She looked at me then, really looked at me, for the first time since the night I saw her in Nathan's window. The confusion in her eyes slowly turned into a cold, scary understanding. "You knew," she breathed. The truth hit her hard. "You knew about Nathan. You knew about us. You didn't forgive me. You waited." I gave her a small, quiet smile. It was the smile of a man who had finally finished his life's work. "I don't forgive, Clara," I said, my voice low and steady. "I record, and I change. You and Nathan wrote a story of cheating. I just took the final picture. I wrote the ending." Her face was full of pure hate and sadness. She knew the truth. She was stuck in a story I had made up, and she could not get out. I stood up. "I have to go now, Clara. I will get you a good lawyer. But you know what the quietest sound in the world is? It's the sound of a life ending, and you, my dear, are about to hear it." I left her there. She was screaming my name. Her voice echoed down the cold hallway. She died 1 month later. The official report said she killed herself with too much medicine. She had found a way to get a lot of sleeping pills. It was the desperate act of a woman who had lost everything. But I had visited her the day before. I brought her a small, kind meal, a final sign of my forgiveness. It was a simple, home-cooked meal, one she used to love. I had put a strong, untraceable poison in it, a drug that makes you die slowly and quietly, like a huge overdose. It left no sign in the normal tests. It looked exactly like the sadness that had broken her. I remember the final picture of her in the morgue. Her face was peaceful at last. The worry was gone. The fear was gone. The guilt was gone. She was simply finished. I stood over her. My camera was silent in my bag. I did not need a picture. The image was already perfect in my mind. The quiet after death is the most honest sound in the world. It has been 7 months since Clara's final picture. The world has moved on, not caring much. The police station has a new detective in Nathan's old office. The scandal is not on the front page anymore. Soon, it will be just another old file, a number in the city's sad history. I am free. No one punished me. I am the quiet man who lost his fiancée and his best friend to a sad story of bad deeds and sadness. I am the one who lived. I am the one who controlled the story from the first picture to the last. I sit in my apartment. It feels cleaner, quieter, and more organized than ever. I don't think about love or hate. Those are messy, loud feelings that belong to the living. I think about control. I have learned that getting revenge is not about being fair. Being fair is a system with rules, a messy way to find the truth. Getting revenge is about writing the story. It is about taking the messy, ugly story of your life and writing the ending exactly how you want it. I did not try to punish Nathan and Clara. I tried to finish them. I gave their lives a final, perfect, sad structure. I wrote their suffering, and by doing that, I wrote my own piece. The quiet is total now. It is the sound of a perfectly closed case. I am back at work. I am taking pictures of the city's endless line of endings. People respect me more than ever. The chief of police thinks I am a strong man who went through a sad time with quiet grace. They think my quietness is strength. They do not know it is an empty space. Just yesterday, a new person came into my life. Her name is Detective Sarah Vance. She is young, smart, and just moved here. She has Nathan's old desk. She came to me with a file, an old case from 3 years ago. She was looking for the first pictures, the ones that the police said were not helpful. "People say you are very good, Eli," she said. Her voice was clear and professional. "They say you see things no one else does, that you catch the truth." I looked at her. She has a kind smile, a bright, honest look in her eyes that reminds me of Clara but without the fear. She is a clean page. "I just record what is there, detective," I said, my voice calm. "The camera does not lie." She smiled again. It was a real, open smile. "I hope you will teach me how to see it." I nodded. "I would be happy to, Detective Vance." I wonder what her story will be. I wonder if she will be easier to understand than the last two. I wonder if I will need to take her picture one day. The work, after all, is never truly finished. The world is full of messy, changing people, and I am the one who brings order to the mess. I am the one who writes the final, quiet truth.